An elderly man thought his adopted son would take him to the nursing home, but the surprise turned his life upside down. Before we continue with this story, please tell us, where are you listening from today? Ricardo sat down. Morales, a widowed man in his 70s, in his room. The small town of Nashville in the state of Texas. He gazes out the window towards the busy streets. Below her was always a man who cherished his dignity, a man. He values his independence, but his body is weaker today. His memory is more obscure, and his heart is heavier with sorrow. With his son Carlos and his wife Camila, however, he feels like a shadow of the man he once was. Ricardo has made a painful decision. He no longer wants being a burden. The feeling of guilt was gnawing at it. His chest heaved whenever he looked at his grandson's room, which he had occupied. Now, he saw his family's quick farewells before. They're going to work or receiving their meal. He came to her from her neighbor Teresa, and it seemed to him that he was moving to a nursing home, not as a place of exile, but as a haven for all. But behind his calm exterior, he longed for something. He couldn't name him. He didn't feel like he was forgetting. Not only was Ricardo's life pointless, but it was also futile. His mind would always return to this way, repeatedly. To Nashville, where he built with his late wife. Isabella and her husband lived in a small wooden house. Isabella brought warmth to his world. Her laughter echoed in every corner of the house. Ricardo adopted the child Carlos when he married her. He wasn't his son by blood, but ever since he called him Papa, he swore to give him everything. And together they were Ricardo. A man from the land takes care of his garden with the help of an assistant. His loyal horse, Navarro. But all that vanished on the night of the fire. One evening he lit a candle to break the injustice of the power outage. After a long day, the potato madness with Navarro was overcome by drowsiness. The sofa, and when he woke up the air was saturated with smoke in the air. The neighbors broke down the door and pulled him to outside, but the home, the memories and the belongings, Isabella and all that they had gathered burned to ashes. When he woke up, Ricardo died in the hospital after 24 hours. One day the doctors told him he was lucky to have survived, but he felt not luck, but emptiness. And when Carlos took him in Nashville to recover, Ricardo has behind him not only his house, but also a piece of his spirit. Was not life in Carlos's house as Carlos and Camila wished they were both engrossed in work. They seemed to be keeping their distance from him, neglecting the matter of his food. His needs were in the hands of his kind neighbor Teresa. The heart, but she doesn't hide her opinions, she told him one day. She shook her head. They don't want you here, ya. Ricardo, that's how it is everywhere when we get old. Her words remained. My children don't want to put up with us. It haunts him like a sad echo on his birthday. Alone in front of a piece of cake that Teresa had left for him, he was. Carlos and Camila congratulated him in the morning, but they did not. They stayed to celebrate, but the feeling of loneliness was suffocating him. He could take it no longer, so he confronted his son one evening. He said firmly, take me to a nursing home and show me up. In Nashville, he used the money to pay for expenses, not. I don't want to be a burden on you or Camila anymore. Not now, Dad. Carlos replied with a sigh. We'll talk later. It's been a long day. I exploded. Ricardo, you'll feel frustrated if you don't do it. I will do it myself. I will prostrate myself. I am content. Carlos shrugged and left, abandoning him to drown. In a deeper sense of non-existence, the days passed. Weeks passed, and his pleas disappeared. The air without an echo sat every night on the edge. His bed contemplates the ballet pictures of Isabella. He keeps it in his wallet and whispers an apology to her. His heart grew heavier because of the burden he carried. As the days passed and Carlos and Camila's house fell silent, he doubles his unity. Then on a bright Saturday morning, everything changes. Something. Carlos entered his room carrying a white shirt, neatly folded and neatly packed with tools. A fresh cleaning followed, complete with towels and clean sheets. He said in a steady, unreadable voice, pack them up. Your luggage. Dad, we're going on a trip. Ricardo froze and his hands trembled as he held. The words echoed in his ears as if in the picture. A sad song filled with both comfort and pain. Finally, he thought, they're taking me. And then he nodded silently. He quickly packs his things, folding his few clothes. With meticulous care and a heart full of pain, he placed Isabella's picture at the top of the pile before it closed. The pill was taken so tightly, it seemed like a final farewell. The road is silent. The only sound is the whir of the engine. Ricardo sat in the back seat holding. He grabbed his bag so hard that his joints turned white while he was. Carlos drives with his eyes fixed on the road. Camila sat, gazing out the window with a smile. A small thing dances on her lips, but that Ricardo's smile seemed out of place. A touch of joy on a day that should have been gloomy, and their departure from the city limits of Nashville took skyscrapers. The clouds and bustling streets fade behind, rolling hills and sprawling farms. The scene appeared blurry to others, but Ricardo saw every detail in it with sharp clarity. The crumbling walls on both sides of the road are stained. Wildflowers scattered in the fields and trees. The ancient oak that stands proudly facing the sky. Those views awakened memories within him. His youthful days and his travels with Isabella through the countryside and their laughter that filled the air. As they dreamed of growing old together, his thoughts drifted further. In the past, he remembered Isabella's laughter when she bursts with joy at his lame jokes, and remembers the first, Carlos's steps, and how the little boy stumbled and fell between his arms, and his little laughs echoing in postponement. He also recalled his garden in Nashville and the smell of the soil, the dew when he turns it over with a pickaxe next to his horse. Loyal Navarro and his wife, working the land together, sighed. Ricardo sighed shakily, tears welling in his eyes. His eyes were not only leaving his family, but leaving a whole life and memories that had become homeless, and dreams he had woven with Isabella then. Carlos's father's image faded through the mirror. As he wiped his eyes with his handkerchief, he said in a tone that gathered between calm and worry, "Are you all right, Dad?" Ricardo quickly hid the handkerchief in his pocket and shook. He nodded slightly, saying, "Yes, it's just me. Tired." Camila turned to him with a gentle smile. She said, "We're almost there. You'll feel better soon." Ricardo repeated his gesture, his chest tight with emotion. The meeting concluded with the phrase, "We are about to arrive." It was ringing in his ears. Was it a promise of comfort or confirming his worst fears? And with a rise, the car is on a winding road lined with trees. The denseness made Ricardo realize he no longer knew that. The area's heart began to beat rapidly. There were no houses, nor signs of life, apart from rare interruptions in sunlight filters through the trees, revealing the path, endlessly stretching toward the lonely, gloomy horizon that swallowed. He struggled to his feet and gripped his bag tightly. He asked in a broken voice, "Where are we going?" The answer came. Carlos, with a slight smile and a mysterious tone, said, "You will see." Ricardo's own thoughts raced through his mind. Could this road lead to a house? It's a remote area for the elderly, far from the city. Their way of leaving him behind, out of sight. And the hearts, after a long distance, the car started. She slows her pace, swaying on the gravel as she enters. In a spacious area, Carlos stopped the engine and turned around. He turned to his father and said, "Here we are, Father." Ricardo's body was stiff as Carlos stepped out of. He got into the car, opened the back door for him, and then helped him. She descended gently while carrying the entire bag. Ricardo adjusted his glasses, and his heart pounded violently and anxiously. His eyes were fixed on the sun, expecting to see its face. A pale gray for a nursing home, just as I imagined. But his breath caught in his chest as he stood before the house. His home knew him well, but he was not the structure. The black burnt one he left last time in the house. A dazzling, completely rebuilt masterpiece that shines under the light. The sun, as if it had been torn from his memory and returned to life. White paint gleams in the railings, sturdy and new, and the windows gleam with a clarity that is almost. The dreamer's knees buckled, so Carlos quickly grabbed him. He said gently, "Wait a moment." Ricardo muttered in a hoarse voice, barely audible, "What is this?" Carlos smiled, his eyes sparkling with affection. "Welcome home, Father." Ricardo in front of his gleaming house facade and his legs. They trembled as he held his son's arm for support. He had before him not just a house, but a whole life. Reviving it was a life they thought had turned to ashes along with its wood. The burned man blinked repeatedly, trying to convince himself that he doesn't dream, Carlos said as he led him towards the balcony. Come inside, Dad. She followed him completely, carrying him. The bag stopped Ricardo for a moment and ran his fingers over it, on the newly painted railings and refreshed. His breath smelled of pine and new paint. The front door opened with a soft creak, revealing what was inside. Ricardo gasped in astonishment. The design was familiar, but everything looked new. Shiny, polished wooden floors, walls painted in various colors. Warm and cozy, with furniture that reminds him of the warmth he created. With Isabella one day, and on the mantelpiece she rested, a framed photo of their wedding, in which they are both smiling. Time had imprisoned her. Ricardo's voice trembled as he whispered how, and Carlos gestured for him to sit down. His old seat, which was restored and renovated, with the same fabric, the one Isabella chose. Then he said in a choked voice, out of affection, Dad, we never intended to send you to a nursing home. We knew how much this meant to you. The house, Carlos said in an emotional voice when the house burned down, Dad. May God help us rebuild it. Our message in life is something we didn't tell you because we wanted to. The surprise should be complete, Camila added. She places her hand on Ricardo's shoulder. We used the land you loved all your life, basically. For a fresh start, all the neighbors contributed. Each of them wanted to lend a helping hand to Carlos. He reached into one of the drawers and took out a tattered envelope. He asked, Do you remember those papers you signed before? Ricardo nodded and furrowed his brow. Carlos said, I said it was a contract to sell the land. He nodded, smiling slightly. No, Father, it was. To be clear and constructive, we need your approval to begin. Every nail and every beam is work here for you. Ricardo's eyes filled with tears and his voice trembled. He muttered, I thought I'd lost everything, Isabella. This house contains everything Carlos gave him. A photo album. Thick-edged, slightly burnt, but its pages. I'm still safe, but not everything, Dad. Look, I'm trembling. Ricardo's hand as he opened the album and found inside photos that survived the fire. Photos of him with Isabella. They danced in celebration of their wedding anniversary and took pictures. Carlos has a small child who stumbles in his steps. The first and another of Isabella, who is planting flowers. The smell of smoke still lingered in the garden. The pages were full, but the images were vibrant and alive. Pass on. His trembling fingers on a picture of Isabella, and she carries a basket of fresh vegetables, her face beaming, with an unforgettable smile. He murmured, tears streaming down his cheeks. She loved that garden, and he could barely catch his breath from the intensity. The effect was so strong that a familiar sound of neighing echoed outside. A quiet voice broke the silence, freezing Ricardo in place. His eyes widened in surprise. Carlos smiled and gestured, with his hand towards the door. He said, Come and see for yourself. Ricardo stumbled towards the balcony, his heart. It beats like drums in his chest, and there at the mast, the new one, near the park, is where Navarro stopped his horse. The dear one's fur shines under the sunlight, and his mane, carefully styled. Ricardo gasped, his voice caught his throat. In his throat, Navarro let out another neigh and struck. The earth, with its hoof, cried out as if reviving an old friend. Ricardo, emotionally, tears streaming down his face. He hurried towards the horse with all the strength he had left in his legs. The animal recognized him immediately and bowed down to him. Ricardo, hugging his neck and reassuring his face, said, with a choked voice, I said, You're alive. I thought I'd lost you too. Camila stood next to Carlos on the balcony. She watched the scene with tearful eyes and said, I have. We found him weeks after the fire. He had gotten lost in the outskirts of the city, so the neighbors took care of him until we were able to retrieve him. Ricardo remained standing for a long time. He gently and tenderly runs his hand over Navarro's mane. The sun warms his back, and the warmth of the house is behind him, and his family by his side, a mixture of reassurance for him. He had known him for a long time. He turned to his son and said in a voice, trembling with gratitude, he said, All this for me, Uma. Carlos said, I've done a lot of. Ricardo shook his head, overcome with emotion. My son, This is not just some, this is all. And with the setting sun, the sky was tinged with shades of orange. And the pink one, and Ricardo sat on the balcony next to Carlos and Camila while Navarro was tending. Quietly in the garden, the sound of crickets echoing. On the horizon, for the first time in years, he felt that. His whole heart was burdened by loneliness and sadness. Now it is filled with peace and joy for the house that he thought he was lost forever. He returned to it not only in bricks and wood, but in love, effort, and a loyal family. Ricardo said in a low voice. He broke the silence. I was wrong. I thought I was a burden. You were to blame, but you have proven to me that I am not. Carlos took his hand and held his father's hand, saying, You are not a burden, Father. You are our foundation. Ricardo looked at his son, then to the house, then to Navarro. He is grazing peacefully for the first time in years. He allowed himself to believe those words. It overcame him. Out of gratitude, he hugged his son tightly, saying, I'm sorry. My son, I doubted you and thought you no longer cared. Carlos shook his head and said gently, You were never a burden. We just wanted to bring back the home you loved. Because you deserve it that night, within those walls. Ricardo began arranging his rebuilt home. His belongings and his heart are filled with contentment, as they haven't been since. Years passed, and as the sun dipped below the horizon, its golden rays illuminated the new house and stood. In the middle of the living room, he contemplates every corner and a painting on the wall. Every detail spoke of love and loyalty and the son's insistence on repaying his father's kindness. Carlos stood beside him with a silent smile, while Camila was in the kitchen preparing dinner, leaving the two men in the place that carries the scent. Ages of memories, Ricardo's throat tightened. With tears in his eyes, he turned to his son, saying in a trembling voice, My son, I don't know what to say. I doubted you and thought, you no longer care, and you wanted to get rid of me. Carlos's features softened, and he approached him, placing his hand. With a firm and tender touch on his father's shoulder, Carlos said in a voice, Truly, Father, you were never a burden, not even in one day, all we did during the nights, the long weekends. We spent our time building this house out of love. Because you deserve happiness, he said, his tone suggesting. Serenity gently touched Ricardo's wounded soul. And Hanan, Ricardo couldn't contain his feelings and hugged him, holding his son tightly to his chest. Letting him go would mean the end of everything. What was built, and that embrace alone could. His deepest gratitude, which words could not express, is translated into words. He whispered, revealing it. His voice trembled as he buried his face in his son's shoulder. I'm sorry, my son. I allowed my fears and loneliness to. Oh, my insight. I should have trusted you, he replied. Carlos looked up at his father with eyes. With tears in her eyes, she said, You did so much for me, Dad. You are the one who raised me, gave me love, and bestowed upon me life. I wouldn't have had it if it weren't for you and what I did for you. It's nothing compared to what you did for me. A deep silence fell between them. Burdened with unspoken words, he then pointed Carlos towards the antique chair by the fireplace. That chair where Ricardo spent evenings. Countless people read or contemplate the stars from behind. The window, he said. Please have a seat, Dad. There's still more to come. Ricardo sat quietly, his fingers feeling around the armrest. The arms gently, and the chair was refurbished without, to lose its old warmth and its beloved familiarity. Carlos knelt beside him and took a book out of his pocket. A small, leather-wrapped object, he said as he handed it to him. This is my mother Isabella's diary, for her father. I found it among the few things we were able to. Rescuing her after the fire, Ricardo's hands trembled. When he opened it, its pages were yellowed but intact. Isabella's fingers traced it with her fine handwriting. Her memories, her love for him, and her dreams for their family were poetry. Her words seeped from the paper to wrap it in a hug of nostalgia. Carlos said in a low voice, My mother. She wants this house to always remain a warm home, overflowing with love. I thought you deserved to hear her voice. Ricardo's vision blurred again with tears, and he muttered, Thank you. That means everything to me. And that night, after dinner, Ricardo began unpacking his bags. Carlos and Camila had left him to settle down. They promised to return the next day with what he needed. To begin sowing his garden anew, he felt as he opened. He took out his bag in a safe place he hadn't seen in years. He carefully placed his old photo frames on a shelf. The fireplace featured a picture of Isabella. She smiles amidst her garden, her presence filling the room. New, then arranged small wooden bird. I gave it to him one day, and a brass key from the house. The old and antique clock passed down through the family. For generations, every piece held a memory, and in every memory, a renewed life. And during that time, he found at the bottom, the bag contained a small box with an envelope bearing the name. Carlos had written a letter weeks ago in. During one of his harsh nights of isolation in Nashville, he apologizes. It was for his son, and he asked him for the page because it was a burden to him. He held the letter for a long time, then tore it up. He quietly whispered to himself, "No more doubts." Carlos taught me that love doesn't count burdens, but before going to bed, Ricardo went out too. The balcony had a cool, refreshing breeze. With the scent of earth and wildflowers, Navarro stood. His loyal horse grazes nearby. He raised his head when his master, Med Ricardo, approached him. He gently stroked his mane and said in a warm voice, "I have. We're back, Navarro. We're back home, and it's the best home. I never imagined the stars would be shining above them." Its light is reflected on the windows of the new house inn. A serene and majestic scene, and for the first time in years, a feeling. Ricardo was genuinely relieved. He thought he had lost. Everything was his wife, his home, and the reason for his existence. But he realized, tonight, all he lost was the illusion of loss. And he gained the greatest certainty, true love. The one who is unconditional and unchanging has returned to the inside. He closed the door behind him and paused for a moment, listening to. The silence of the new house was not the silence of loneliness, but the silence of belonging. And as the days passed, the holidays turned. The weekend turned into a season of joy, if it was. Carlos and Camila visit him regularly while he tends to his garden and cares for Navarro, restoring peace he thought was lost forever. And while many adults are neglected or sent to nursing homes, care proved that love and understanding are possible. Carlos' son was not capable of performing miracles. Ricardo the biologist, but the link that they brought them together. It was stronger than blood, a testament to the family's strength. To restore meaning to life. What about you? Listener, what do you think of Carlos' decision to return? Building his father's house instead of sending him to a home for the disabled. Would you have done the same thing, or would you have to choose another path? Share your opinion with us. Comments. Stories like these not only inspire us, but it reminds us that love alone is capable of rebuilding. We didn't think it was burned forever. If you liked it, don't forget to like this story. Subscribe to the channel for more stories, and tell us what you think in the comments from anywhere in the world. Follow us. We would love to hear from all of you. Thank you for listening to the heart of the story.